Okay, let me ask you a question. How does a company with a near monopoly on the world's computers, with more money than most countries, and with some of the smartest engineers on the planet, manage to completely and utterly fail at the single most important technological shift of the 21st century? This isn't just a story about a failed product. This is a story about a corporate empire that had the world in its hands and let it slip through its fingers. It's a story so full of hubris, missed opportunities, and catastrophic decisions that it's become a legend in the tech world. Bill Gates himself called it his greatest mistake ever. His successor, Steve Ballmer, said it's the thing he regrets the most. Today, we're digging into the graveyard of dead tech to tell the story of Windows Phone. The story of how Microsoft, the undisputed king of the PC, lost the mobile war so badly that it became a punchline. This is the fall of Microsoft's mobile empire. To really understand this disaster, you have to go back, way back, before the iPhone, before Android, to a time when Microsoft was actually a player in the mobile space. I know, it sounds weird, but it's true. Their journey started as early as 1996 with something called Windows CE, an operating system for those clunky handheld personal digital assistants, or PDAs. This eventually evolved into Pocket PC 2000 and was later rebranded in 2003 as Windows Mobile. And for a while, it was fine. It was popular with business users who needed their Outlook email and a pocket version of Microsoft Office on the go. The interface was basically a shrunken-down version of desktop Windows, which meant it was a nightmare to use. Most devices came with a stylus because you needed the precision of a tiny plastic stick to hit the minuscule buttons on their resistive touchscreens. It was clunky, slow, and unintuitive. But in a world before the iPhone, it was one of the only games in town for smart devices. Microsoft was in the game. They had a product, they had partners, they had market share. And then everything changed. January 9th, 2007, Steve Jobs walks onto a stage and introduces the world to the iPhone. It wasn't just a new phone, it was a completely new paradigm. A beautiful, capacitive touchscreen that you could use with your fingers, a simple grid of icons, a full web browser. It was a device aimed at consumers, not just business executives in suits. And what was Microsoft's reaction to this revolutionary device? Then CEO Steve Ballmer famously, and I mean infamously, laughed. In an interview, he scoffed at the iPhone. $500, fully subsidized with a plan, he laughed. I said that is the most expensive phone in the world, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine. He confidently stated, right now we're selling millions and millions and millions of phones a year. Apple is selling 0 phones a year. That quote has aged like milk in a sauna. Ballmer completely missed the point. He saw the iPhone as a competitor to his clunky Windows mobile devices, a toy for consumers that serious business people would never use. He couldn't see that Apple wasn't just selling a phone, they were selling a user experience. And that experience was about to make his entire mobile division look like a fossil. Almost overnight, Windows Mobile went from being a market leader to being hopelessly outdated. The stylus, the tiny start menu, the whole shrunken-down desktop metaphor, it was all obsolete. Microsoft was in trouble. They knew they couldn't just update Windows Mobile, they had to start over. They had to press the reset button. And to their credit, what they came up with was genuinely brilliant. In February 2010, Microsoft unveiled Windows Phone 7. This wasn't just a new OS, it was a radical reimagining of what a smartphone interface could be. Instead of a boring grid of static icons like iOS and Android, Windows Phone 7 introduced the Metro design language. The home screen was made of live tiles, dynamic, customizable squares that updated in real time with information. Your email tile showed unread messages. Your calendar tile showed your next appointment. Your contacts tile showed their latest social media updates.
It was clean, elegant, and focused on typography and smooth animations. Critics loved it. ZDNet praised its originality and fresh look, and Gadget applauded its deep integration with services like Facebook and Windows Live. It was different, it was bold, and for the first time in a long time, Microsoft had something in the mobile space that felt futuristic. But here's the problem with starting from scratch. You're starting from scratch. When Windows Phone 7 launched in late 2010, it was missing basic, fundamental features that users had come to expect. There was no multitasking, no copy and paste, no system-wide file manager, no USB mass storage. The list of disadvantages was painfully long. It was a beautiful, innovative operating system that was also functionally years behind its competitors on day one. Microsoft had a great-looking OS, but they had another, even bigger problem: hardware. Phone manufacturers were flocking to Android because it was free and open. Microsoft, in classic Microsoft fashion, wanted to maintain tight control over the hardware and user experience, much like Apple. This made partnering with them difficult and expensive. They had a fantastic product, but almost no one was making it. Microsoft's mobile strategy was dead in the water. It needed a lifeline, and that lifeline had a name: Nokia. By 2011, Nokia, the once unbeatable king of the mobile world, was in a death spiral. Their Symbian OS was being crushed by iOS and Android. They were desperate. Their new CEO, a former Microsoft executive named Stephen Elop, wrote one of the most famous and dramatic memos in corporate history. It became known as the Burning Platform Memo. In it, Elop told the story of a man on a burning oil rig in the North Sea. He could stay on the platform and be consumed by the flames, or he could jump 30 meters into the freezing dark Atlantic waters. The man jumped. Elop's point was clear. Nokia was standing on a burning platform. Their old way of doing things was the fire. Staying put meant certain death. The freezing, uncertain water was a radical change in strategy.
He wrote, "Our competitors aren't taking our market share with devices. They are taking our market share with an entire ecosystem." He admitted, the first iPhone shipped in 2007, and we still don't have a product that is close to their experience. Android came on the scene just over 2 years ago, and this week they took our leadership position in smartphone volumes. Unbelievable. Just days after that memo leaked, in February 2011, Nokia and Microsoft announced a massive partnership. Nokia would abandon its own operating systems and exclusively use Windows Phone for its future smartphones. This was it. This was Microsoft's big shot. They now had a dedicated, world-class hardware partner. The result was the Nokia Lumia line, and honestly, the phones were gorgeous. With their colorful polycarbonate bodies and fantastic cameras, they were some of the best-looking and best-built hardware on the market. The Lumia 920, with its incredible low-light camera and optical image stabilization, was years ahead of the competition. For a brief, shining moment, it looked like this partnership might actually work. They had a unique OS and beautiful hardware. What could possibly go wrong? Well, one thing. The single most important thing in the modern smartphone world: apps. This was the problem that would ultimately kill Windows Phone. It's the classic chicken and egg scenario. Users won't switch to a new platform if it doesn't have the apps they want, and developers won't waste time and money building apps for a platform that has no users. Microsoft was caught in this death spiral from day one. They called it the app gap, and it was a chasm. While the iOS App Store and Google Play Store boasted over 1 million apps each, the Windows Phone Store struggled to reach a few 100,000. And it wasn't just about the quantity. It was about the quality and the key tentpole apps that people used every day. Big names were either missing entirely or were terrible, half-assed versions compared to their iOS and Android counterparts. There was no Snapchat. For years, there was no official Instagram. And most importantly, Google, Microsoft's biggest rival, went out of its way to sabotage the platform. They refused to build any of their popular apps for Windows Phone. No Gmail, no Google Maps, and crucially, no YouTube. At one point, Microsoft built its own YouTube app, and Google had it taken down. It was a brutal, strategic kneecapping. Microsoft tried everything to fix this.
They literally paid companies millions of dollars to build apps for their platform, but it was unsustainable. Developers saw the market share numbers, which never climbed above a few percentage points globally, and just didn't see a reason to invest in the platform. The app gap was a wound that would never heal. By 2013, the dream was fading. The Microsoft-Nokia partnership wasn't turning the tide. Nokia's stock price had collapsed, so Microsoft made their final, desperate, multi-billion-dollar mistake. In September 2013, they announced they were buying Nokia's entire mobile phone business for a staggering 5.44 billion euros, which was about $7.2 billion at the time. Steve Ballmer called it a bold step into the future. In reality, it was a bold step off a cliff. The deal officially closed in April 2014. Microsoft now owned the factories, the design teams, the supply chains, and the 25,000 employees of Nokia's phone division. They were now a true hardware and software company, just like Apple. But it was too little, way too late. Their last real attempt to save the platform was Windows 10 Mobile, released in late 2015. The idea was ambitious: a single, unified Windows operating system that would run across PCs, tablets, and phones. But the execution was a mess. The OS was buggy, unfinished, and inconsistent. The flagship phones launched with it, the Lumia 950 and 950 XL, were met with lukewarm reviews. The end came swiftly and brutally. In July 2015, less than a year and a half after the deal closed, Microsoft announced it was taking a $7.6 billion write-down on the Nokia acquisition. That's more than they paid for the entire company. They also announced they were laying off 7,800 employees, mostly from the newly acquired phone division. It was a catastrophic admission of failure. The company kept Windows Phone on life support for a couple more years, but by 2017, they officially announced they were no longer developing new features or hardware. The market share had dwindled to a statistical rounding error, approximately 0.01%. The mobile empire was dead. So what killed it? It wasn't one single thing. It was a cascade of failures. First, arrogance. Steve Ballmer's laughter was a symptom of a company that was too dominant in one market to see the future coming from another. Second, timing. They were years late to the modern smartphone party. By the time they launched a truly competitive OS, the war was already over. And third, the app gap. The fatal, insoluble problem that proved that in the modern era, it's not the device that matters, it's the ecosystem. The story of Windows Phone is a tragedy. It's a story of a company that had the money, the talent, and at times even the right ideas. The Metro UI was genuinely innovative. The Nokia Lumia hardware was beautiful. But in the brutal, fast-moving world of mobile technology, good ideas and a mountain of cash aren't enough. You need perfect timing, perfect strategy, and a little bit of luck. Microsoft had none of them. They failed, and as one former executive put it, they failed gloriously. If you enjoyed this tech obituary, hit subscribe for more stories about the biggest failures in tech history. And if you want to see another story of a company that once ruled the world and lost it all, check out my video on the death of BlackBerry. It's a wild ride. See you later.